My wife has been insisting that we have a three-way with my sister. When I put my foot down and told her no, she took matters into her own hands. My wife of 7 years is bi, and this is no secret as she told me this when we first started dating. This has never really affected our relationship however, she has always been fiercely loyal, and I never considered the fact that she is bi a problem for me. That was until a few months ago she started dropping hints about wanting to enter a poly relationship specifically so she could go out and sleep with other girls. She did not want to enter an emotional relationship with them, but did want to sleep with them. Immediately, I shut this suggestion down as I was not into that sort of thing at all. She asked me several times, and each time I put my foot down harder and harder. She even tried to coerce me into doing so by promising me that I could have 3 ways with her and her partner, but this made me even more mad. This wasn't a one-time thing either, she kept at this request for weeks in total, and it created a huge rift between us for said time frame. It was almost like she was unwilling to let this poly thing go. It was only when I told her that unless she stops I will file for divorce that her endless badgering came to a halt. She did not speak of this again for a while, and she even apologized to me for relentlessly asking me to be poly. For the next 2 months everything was good in our relationship. Although the fact she insisted on being poly a few months prior still harped at me, I was willing to let it go. She had let it go after all herself. That was until a family holiday a month ago. My parents invited me, my wife, and my sister Jess to a holiday in Bali. This was the first holiday we had a chance of taking as a family since the virus, so we were all quite pumped to go. The holiday itself lasted around a week, and went by phenomenally. Lots of beach trips out, restaurant visits, and we even stayed at a hotel near the coastline. There was one thing that caught my eye during the holiday however. That was the way my wife acted around Jess. She seemed a little flirty. Whenever we were at the beach, I found my wife's eyes gazing at Jess way too often. If we were out my wife insisted that we sit beside Jess, and she was all up in Jess' personal space. Now, there's 2 things that make me a little uneasy about this. Jess is very conventionally attractive, I know she's my sister, but I still wouldn't say no. The other thing that makes me a little wary of this is that Jess is a lesbian, and my wife knows this. This is why I found my wife's actions at the family holiday a little peculiar to say the least. I talked to Jess about it at the end of the holiday, and she said that she picked up the same vibe as me. She did say that although she found my wife immensely attractive and under any other circumstance she would go for it, the fact she was her brother's wife made it off limits. I then made the mistake of confronting my wife about this just a few days after the holiday. My wife denied it at first, but I could tell that she was hesitating before answering my questions about Jess, and so finally after applying enough pressure, she cracked and admitted that she found my sister irresistibly hot. Hearing this broke my heart, but what hurt even worse is the next words that came out of my wife's mouth. I know I told you I won't ever ask again. But if you let me sleep with your sister just once, I won't ever ask to be poly again. You can even join us if you want, we can have a 3-way. Please. The audacity of my wife actually had me gobsmacked. I replied, so let me get this straight. You seriously think that I'm gonna let you F my sister? Also, what kind of proposal is that? Oh, he might say no to just us 2 effing. But if I also let him F his sister, he might say yes. What kind of thinking is that? I admit, my response was very rude, but I honestly had no other words to say. After a full month of me saying no to being poly, and her promising to let it go, she brings it up again. To no surprise, she did not take this lightly, and somewhat of a screaming match occurred. This screaming match ended in me telling her that, if she doesn't like being just with me she can pack her stuff and leave. We slept in separate rooms that night. We kept sleeping in separate rooms for the next 2 weeks, and we did not talk too much. At some point I let her know I was not interested in talking to her until I get an apology from her, and she said she was not interested in talking until she got an apology from me. And so things stayed that way. The only things we discussed were bills, work, and household chores. We watched TV in silence sometimes too. Needless to say that physical affection was scarce. We did not even kiss, and it felt like the relationship was quickly dying. Well, it fully died a few days ago. A few days ago I was meant to be working late, and I informed my wife of this. Well, my work was finished super early, even earlier than most days, and my boss was gracious enough to let me go early. When walking in through the front door, I expected silence and the atmosphere to be as tense as it has been. Instead, when I walked in I heard our bed squeaking. I saw shoes, not my wife's shoes, on the floor, and I headed upstairs to investigate the scene. I could already guess what was happening, but I wanted to confirm. It was in our room that I saw it. My sister Jess, and my wife, getting it on. And not only were they getting it on, it was some of the freakiest stuff I've ever seen. My wife had my sister tied and blindfolded. Walking in and seeing your wife do that to your sister is something I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. When my wife saw me she instantly covered up and untied my sister, begging me to let her explain. But I did not. I simply left the house and drove away. I've been staying with my best friend for the past few days and he's aware of what's going on. I've blocked both my wife and my sister, as well as my parents as their calls are never ending. I truly don't know what to do.